Well. It's Tuesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. Time to go on the hot seat right here on the Audible channel. But first, footballguys.com. That's the website. Appreciate you joining me here every Tuesday at this time and every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for the Ask Me Anything live streams. They're fantastic as well. Not as fantastic as this, but pretty fantastic. And they're fantastic. Now, hit the like button, the notification bell, do all the YouTube stuff. And or don't like us. We're grown-up adults. We can take it either way. And by we, I mean me, Bob Harris, and also my great guest tonight, Lindsay Rhodes. You know her from Sumer Sports Show with Thomas Dimitroff, which is fantastic show. Lindsay, also Fantasy Dirt with our friend Michael Fabiano.
That show's all right.
That show's all right. So like Lindsay though, like I mean, I think most of us like are sitting here, Lindsay, going, man, we see you and we think, I remember when NFL Network was good and like Total Access was the show. Shots fired. If you don't remember, people, Lindsay Rhodes was like the face of NFL Network. When NFL Network had appointment viewing, when Total Access was something I watched every damn day. Sorry, Joe. Every day. It was appointment viewing. You couldn't miss it. And Lindsay was totally the face of that program. Did a great job there on DirecTV. Also, my colleague on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Great to work with her there as well. So it's great to have you on here. Lindsay, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be with you. Lester's got a bad feeling.
Yeah, Lester often has a bad feeling, though. I think it's like he hasn't been into his stash yet. I'm guessing. I don't know, Lester, is that possible? Hello, Albert. Hello, Andrea. Nice to see you. Hey, Royal Slade. Scampers. Always fantastic to see you. If there's any breaking news, we know Scampers will break it. Tootsie Pop. Hi, Rachel. How you doing?
Yay, Rach!
Rachel's in the room. We'll see you next Tuesday. We got a little thing going on there. So it's waiver wire week. But first, there's a couple newsy things. Lindsay, let's get to just kind of kick around a little bit before we get into the waiver wire stuff. If you've got questions, people, we're going to go through the waiver wire by position. You know the drill. We'll kind of break it down and we'll get to questions about the positions as we're talking about the positions. And that's my feeble ploy to get you to stay for an entire hour of this nonsense. And most of you do. And I love that part. Shane Waldron, Lindsay, it wasn't going good. The Bears were horrible. 29th in the league in offense. Caleb Williams sacked 38 times. 38 times. Somewhere David Carr's going, wow, that's a lot.
Wow. Having PTSD.
Right? So what as you watch the Bears, what have been the problems with this offense?
I mean, where to start? I think that I don't want to take all of it off of Caleb. Okay. So I'm just going to say that there's definitely a part of me that is unwilling to just let go of my priors where Caleb Williams is returned. And by the way, I think that's probably fair because it's 10 games into his rookie season. So I think, holding on to the fact that I think he's still going to be a good NFL quarterback and has a lot of talent, I don't think that that's unreasonable. That said, he has not played well, but I don't know how much of that has to do with him being asked to do things that he's not comfortable with and not like when you are a quarterback, so much of it, I think, has to be like, there has to be buy-in. There has to be a certain degree of understanding so that you have a comfortability, so that you're not like, okay, he wants me to do this thing that feels very unnatural to me, and I'm going to try to do the thing that feels unnatural, but that's not what my instinct tells me, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. Like, I think there's so many things in play here for Caleb that I don't know how much of it's on Caleb. Like, the offense, I don't think has been particularly well suited for him. I don't think that they've set him up to succeed. And so we have seen him not succeed. And so you're never happy to see somebody lose their job. But in terms of the advancement and development of Caleb, I think that this was an obviously necessary step. And I think it's probably just the first step, honestly, because my guess is that Eberflus has to be next to go. The fact that there were conversations yesterday, I saw on Twitter, people bringing up like the potential of sending Caleb to the bench. I was like, that is so far down the list of things that would happen in the order in which they would happen. Like a lot of people would lose their jobs before Caleb Williams was sent to the bench.
I thought you would say the same thing about Anthony Richardson not long ago myself. And here we are watching Joe Flacco lose games instead of Anthony Richardson lose games and developing it to his potential. So
Maybe, but I don't know. I feel like they're different. And I don't, and maybe it's not fair that I think that they're different, but I think Anthony had so little, Anthony, we're on a first name basis. I think he had so little experience coming in.
It's true.
And I think that there are just obvious ways that you're like, okay, like, look, the tools are special. We are going to protect those tools. We're going to do everything. Those tools get every chance, every single one. Other quarterbacks can come into the league that they can fail because I think you're anticipating that they're failing for reasons that are related to the level of play, stuff like that. Like, oh, they just can't do it at this level. In Anthony Richardson's case, I think it's experience related. I think it's the fact that he just doesn't know how to do certain things because he's never done them. And so I've been frustrated with the way that Shane Steichen has messaged that, because they keep these beat writers in Indy are doing a great job. There was a series of questions that was asked there yesterday to him. Like, could you explain, you say that, we're following the process. Could you just give us an example of what the process is? And he's like, it's just the process. I'm like, can you be a little bit more specific? Because I don't think that's that complicated to say, like, hey, look, we took him off the field. We think that we're going to have somebody like working with him on, without an alarm bell of like, there's a game on Sunday that you're preparing for. We're going to walk you through watching the game tape. We're going to tell you what we would like for you to see. We're going to tell you what we see. We're going to train you to start looking for these things. When he came on Fantasy Dirt like a month ago, he said that he changed how he watched tape in the games that he was on the sideline when he was injured. Like, you don't do that if you have a ton of experience and you know exactly what you're watching and how to do that. I feel like he's just still in a learning mode. And Caleb, I just think it's just bad situation, bad coaching. And I'd very much like to see the whole thing blown up and see what it looks like in a good environment.
I think for with Caleb too, I mean, clearly he's holding on to the ball too long in some cases. And a wide receiver who for his entire career had been quarterback proof. A guy who played in Carolina was one of the most effective wide receivers in the NFL, playing with a series of nobodies at quarterback, including, late career Cam Newton. No offense intended, sir. But and many others, right? Like we go through the list, but he was still productive, and last year with Justin Fields still productive. So what do we make of the reports on the local radio Waddle and Sylvie show that the players had gone not only asked Eberflus to fire Waldron but to bench Caleb for Tyson Bagent?
I mean, I guess you understand why somebody would do that to protect their own set of circumstances. If they're like, he's not ready. And I think that was probably true in Indianapolis also. I think everybody looked at the situation and they were like, I can't do it with this. Like, how am I gonna earn myself a new contract and prove that I can, that I deserve to get paid? And so my guess is in the short term that they would have more success with Tyson Bagent. But I just wholeheartedly believe that if they had higher level coordinating, play calling, coaching in general, he's not the first one. Justin Fields, so now we're meant to think Justin Fields went there and underperformed, and now Caleb Williams has gone there and underperformed. Like, there was a performance level before they went there. And now they've all gone backwards. And what's the through line there?
Yeah. Well, Matt Waldman and I discussed this on the our Monday podcast. It can't be named on this program because there are not enough Sorry Joes to cover the title. But we talked about that whole situation, and I think that's totally true. Why do some teams, like, look at the Detroit Lions, right? You end up with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, like the ideal duo to run this team. Let's go to Houston, where D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio was kind of the butt of jokes. And all of a sudden he's paired with this dynamic young coach and they're getting the most out of this team. There's something to be said. The Bears have struggled to find that combination for many, many years, and maybe they'll never get it. And maybe that's something they'll have to deal with, but totally feel that's a big part of it, is the overall organization. And I don't know, maybe I could have said the same thing about the Washington Commanders, but they unloaded ownership and something changed, right? We have different people in there and we were getting different outcomes. So maybe we'll see what's going on. Zari, my man, says maybe they're too scared Bagent because he would play better than Caleb. And that's always possible, right? I mean, that is a possibility.
Oh, I think it's probably likely, but that doesn't mean that he is a better quarterback than Caleb. And so that's what we have to keep in mind here. Even when the Colts went to Flacco, them going to Flacco, I think, was the right move at the time. Now he's played like crap.
Now it's time to go back.
Except in the interest of protecting Anthony Richardson, and I know that this is anti-fantasy and all that kind of stuff. Like, we want Anthony Richardson. I want Anthony Richardson to be a good quarterback for a long time. And so in the interest of that, I don't want to put him on the football field when he is clearly just in over his head. I want him to have the luxury of developing a little bit like Jordan Love did off to the side. I want him protected. I think he's such a special asset. And
my disappointment, my sunk cost in Anthony Richardson, all, are part of this equation, as are many of the people in fantasy, especially many of the people I advised in fantasy, which I'm still miserable about. Zari wants to argue that Bajan has better swag than Caleb. I mean, it's a fair, he's been around a little while. You're pushing it, Zari. Zari, though, our colleague here at Football Guys, he had some great. We're gonna come back to some of your other comments, Zari, because I love him. I wanted to talk. I invoked the Texans. What do you make of the Nico Collins thing? Right, like the word is today. Oh, he's 100%. We heard going into the game he was 100%. They didn't activate him off IR until Friday. He had one limited practice. There was no way he's playing on one limited practice. I mean, just wasn't going to happen. You knew that going in, so he's inactive. Now they're saying today, he could have played. We just didn't feel we would have taken the count of the big picture. Well, the big picture is a win over Detroit would have been great. What do you make of this?
Well, so I did not know that he was not going to play. I thought for sure he was going to play because I didn't understand why you would activate him from injured reserve if you didn't intend to play him on Sunday. Like, why wouldn't you hold on to that roster spot until after the game? I don't understand why you just be like, take up a spot. That's fine. We've got so many of them. It doesn't matter. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So the fact that they activated him and then he got in this one practice at the end of the week, none of it made sense to me in terms of just the order of things. And I was texting people on Friday, like, why would they do this on Friday as opposed to Wednesday if they intended on him playing? And they were like, if they activated him in this manner, I would imagine that he's fine. And if he's fine, you're going to play him because he's Nico Collins. And then they didn't. So I was one of the idiots that didn't really protect myself. I put him back into all of my lineups. I got a lot of Nico, Bob. This was a long process. I put it back into all of my lineups. And then 1 hour before that game, which of course is, pretty late in the day, Sunday Night Football, found out he was inactive.
With Jonnu Smith in the flex or...
Yeah, I had an OBJ. I had an OBJ lineup. I had to go that deep. I was like,
Malik might have been the answer there.
Revenge? I don't know. It's the Rams. He played for them once.
Hey, Mel. We see your questions coming in. We're going to get to those. I had a couple other thoughts here that I wanted to touch on some newsy items. Isaiah Pacheco, sounds like they're going to open his window. We see that's not always Jonathan Brooks would like us to know that's not always the pathway to playing time. But how do we feel about the Chiefs backfield? I feel like they might not rush Pacheco back, that they'll take their time. Kareem Hunt's doing fine. Seems like the Chiefs are doing okay as well.
Is he doing fine? I mean, he's doing fine from a fantasy standpoint. He's doing fine. Yes. Okay. Yes, he's doing fine. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that in the way that I did. But what I'm wondering here is he's getting so much volume. And they've been really committed to giving him the volume. What is his yards per carry? What is his EPA? Because Isaiah is a stud. And I would anticipate that when he is healthy, it just goes back to him immediately. So Kareem Hunt on the season is averaging 3.6 yards per carry. He has a rushing yards over expectation per attempt of -0.5 and a rush EPA of -1. So I feel like what's happening here is that they've just committed themselves to having one guy take up all the carries, and they're giving him the ball a lot. And I mean, I suppose that he's having enough success in terms of advancing the ball the way that they need to advance the ball in those plays. But I would reinsert Isaiah Pacheco back into this lineup, give him his regular workload, and I'd be happy to do it.
I'm sure they will. I'm guessing, to me, those numbers and the volume we're seeing from Hunt is suggesting that the other two guys are probably not very good. or we'd be seeing a heck of a lot more. I thought we would see more Samaje Perine for sure. So there you have it. There's a few things going on this week, as there always are. Dak had his surgery, or is having his surgery tomorrow. So we'll see what the Cowboys do going forward. I'll let you and Fabiano ring out that wet dish rag on fantasy dirt.
I need a break from that conversation. I'll tell you that much.
So does Fabiano. Yeah, it's not even fun to talk to him anymore. I can't even troll him. It doesn't even get a rise out of him. He's so bought into the destruction that I can't even get him to nibble on the bait anymore.
He's an angry man.
He's an angry man. Let's look at the quarterbacks who are available right now on Sigmund Bloom. By the way, y'all, go to footballguys.com. Sigmund Bloom's waiver wire every week is available free of charge to everybody, as is my notebook on Thursday. You can go check that out too. It's great. And always every weekday morning, the Daily Update podcast awaits you at 05:30 a.m. with me and Dempsey doing our business there for 10 minutes, just getting you up to speed on the stuff you need to know. But Bloom's got this covered, gives us some bids. I want to see what you think of these guys. I think Bo Nix is a no-brainer. Russell Wilson, a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson, who we have discussed. Is it worth a speculation? I'm holding on to him. I've held on to him on all the teams that I've drafted him, I think, except for one where I just couldn't, there was no maneuverability and I had to make room. But I think if you have him, you're probably doing this anyway. You're holding out hope. We saw at least one game where we showed the flashes of the ability we were looking for. So, is he worth a hold to you? And if somebody dropped him into your league, are you picking him up for maybe that 5 to 10% bid?
It depends. I think it just depends. It depends on my roster construction, what I already have, how desperate I think I might possibly be at some point. I'm not looking to do it in all scenarios because I just think he's almost like at quarterback, like the Alec Pierce of quarterbacks, right? To just stay with the Colts. He's a guy who's the boom and bust and the volatility is it could take wild swings. And I feel like there's very little predictability with regards to when it's going to happen, if it's matchup related. I just think it's just, he's going to he's going to hit a hole and he's going to have a big run, or everything's going to break down and he's going to throw a 70-yarder to Alec Pierce and it's going to be for a touchdown and we're going to have a big score. But I just don't think that he is experienced enough as a quarterback or at a developmental stage where we can predict consistency from him one way or the other, good or bad, neither one. So in that sense, I still have Justin Fields in a ton of different places.
Yeah.
And I'm holding on to him for probably the same thought process here. But also it's largely because I kind of have, I have a lot of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields in certain situations. So I just want to make sure that I have a quarterback. And those are primarily super flex leagues, I would admit. I don't think that either one was ever drafted to be a starter in my league, but I am holding on to him still. And I've thought about dropping him a few times. So in that answer, I suppose it's probably similar to Anthony Richardson to a degree.
Pains me to say it, but I think, we're reaching the point where, it's going to take more than one game for me to have faith in throwing him out there in my fantasy playoff time. Yeah. He's going to have a couple of good games before I get him there. And then even at that, I'm going to be feeling a little uncomfortable. But again, nobody remembers who came in second place. You're swinging big or not swinging. So we'll sort all that out. There'll be some other quarterbacks coming in, maybe off the bye. Maybe Drew Lock is the guy we'll be talking about. Bo Nix, just quickly. Easy, Lindsay. Easy. Bo Nix, there's some upside there. Just what have you thought of his progression so far in his first year as a pro?
Yeah, I've been impressed with him. Some of the advanced numbers from a throwing standpoint are not really popping, but when you just watch the game, I think it's relative to expectation to a degree. Sometimes you watch somebody and you're like, I didn't really think that this was going to be much, but it's a lot better than I expected, and so that taints your analysis.
Yes.
And I think in the case of Bo Nix, I think my expectations were relatively low. And so anything that he does that feels like, oh, this might actually have some legs. He might actually be a franchise quarterback for a little while. We can work with this. I feel like that gets overblown in terms of positivity, in terms of scrambling and stuff like that. I think that there's an upside to him that I didn't necessarily anticipate. And maybe that was, a flaw in my analysis and who he was as a quarterback, but I have been pleasantly surprised.
A lot of talk about Deontay Johnson in the chat. We'll get to some of those here, but traded him for DJ Moore today. Let's hope the new OC gets him going. My expectation is not the new OC gets him going. like all due respect to Thomas Brown, he's been in this role before in Carolina. It's like, it's just putting him in a bad spot. And kudos to him for manning up. He's another McVay, protege, and some of those guys have had great success, and maybe he will have some great success. I don't know that he's being thrust into a position where great success should be expected. So, like that connection, like I would rather have DJ Moore than Deontay Johnson right now, though. What is Deontay Johnson going to be? Do you see him emerging as a viable fantasy option?
I mean, did you see Mike Tomlin shade that he threw at him today?
Yes.
Mike Tomlin with his I don't know, I haven't seen that much of him on tape there in Baltimore. They have better, bigger, better guys that we need to focus on. I don't know. I don't understand the Deontay Johnson thing, to be honest with you, because the fact that he was, I mean, and maybe this is the fantasy lens that we're looking at things, but he was pretty good in Carolina in pretty bad circumstances. And then they trade him to Baltimore, who doesn't need him or want to use him.
Away. I don't pay more for Jonathan Mingo.
Well, that's a Cowboys.
That's a different story.
That's a Cowboys tweet, as they say. That has nothing to do with the value of anybody else. Yeah, I don't understand the Deontay Johnson thing. And originally too, one of the things that they said was that it gives them another deep threat.
Right.
And I was like, is that what he is? Is that who Deontay Johnson is? Like, is that who you go get if you need a deep threat? Is Deontay?
It's funny that Deontay, the last 2 years, Deontay led the NFL both seasons in ESPN's open rate. Both seasons over everybody in the NFL. Like, he gets open, he does a lot of things. I'm told by people who cover the Steelers on a daily basis, there's a flake factor there. And so it's funny because we don't hear about the flake factor from the locals until after guys leave. And I understand why. Like, man, Will Graves, the AP guy, man, I spent about a half hour with him one night after Antonio Brown left, just slack-jawed at the Antonio Brown stories that he was telling after the fact, right? And I mean, like, it was no secret to anybody with the team what Antonio Brown was. And I'm getting a similar vibe with Deontay Johnson, although maybe not to the AB level. I would say not to the AB level. I'll go with that. But this seems to be like they find great receivers. They're a little bit of a flake factor with some of them.
Yeah, well, that's why they call them diva receivers, right?
Divas. That's right. All right, let's look at the running back class we have here. By the way, I'm Bob Harris. Hi, how are you, everybody? If you're just joining in, footballguys.com is the website. You should visit it on a regular basis. All kinds of great stuff there. You should also be watching Fantasy Dirt every single day with Lindsey Rhodes and Michael Fabiano on SI.com. When's the Sumer Sports Show on with Thomas Dimitroff? Because that's a damn good show.
Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, we're doing some version of that.
Follow Lindsay on the X at Lindsay Rhodes _Rhodes. And also, I saw her on the Blue Sky. Everyone's going to the Blue Sky. I know. It's not doing anything. Like I get it. Everyone likes to go anywhere. Like, I'm there for the information. I still get it on X. I'm there at Football Die Hard, everybody. But it's, it's like a fun vibe. I get that part of it. I like the vibe. It's cool.
I will say, I think if you're going for fantasy football conversations, Blue Sky is getting a lot of people that have moved over for fantasy from fantasy and in the fantasy community. So if that's what you're looking for is fantasy content and then conversations, then I think that you can go over now. You don't even have to wait. So one way that it's way behind is like beat writers. I need information.
That's why Twitter is the king for me. I have my lists all made up. I get only the stuff I want. I got my notifications coming in.
Yeah.
And the thing about Blue Sky is like I've been on there for like a year. I got like the invite a year ago. I've just been sitting there like doing nothing. I feel like somebody should do the meme with the stick poking me. Like, and then all of a sudden, John Bosch from Fantasy Cares hit me up on my DMs and said, "Hey Bob, man, we're all going over to Blue Sky. Come play." And so I said, I'm already there. Let's go. So if you're all over there, say hi. I'm Football Die Hard and all. You'll find me. She's Lindsey Rhodes there. I found her as well. It's great. So back to the running backs. Again, these are Sigma Blooms from footballguys.com. You can find the full article there with nice blurbs and explanations about all these players. Jaylen Warren, to me, is a no-brainer. Audric Estime is the one I want to talk about. I see a bad moon rising here. What do you got?
So I did not trust the whole Sean Payton thing before last week. Fabs was on this. He was like, Sean Payton says we need to get him more involved. I was like, When have I heard Sean Payton say that before? And it was a lie. He said this with Mims. He said this with McLaughlin. Like, I've fallen for this banana in the tailpipe before, and I'm not going to do it anymore. I don't believe, love Sean Payton. I'm a big fan. I don't believe what he says when he says stuff like that. I think that it's very much coach speak with him. And then, of course, it actually happened. And he had this 14 carries, and Javonte Williams was like persona non grata. I mean, I don't know what happened there, but I mean, I'm fine with pivoting to a different running back. And it's weird that they did it at this point in the season when they were in a game that was competitive against the Chiefs, and they are very much in the playoff hunt. And then they lose that game, and it impacts, I think, their ability. I mean, they're still in the mix, but especially as the season goes on, the fact that Audric is already in this role, and then he is a young asset with sort of an untapped, unknown component to him. I think that that's what makes him particularly interesting at this stage of the season, because how many times are we going to get a chance to pivot to a younger running back who might have a high ceiling? Like we don't know. And so, you know, if it is what it is right now, then that's kind of what you're signing up for. And then if he turns out to be a very good running back in a developing offense with the young quarterback as well, then more power to you. I think he's the most interesting guy there. I mean, obviously Pacheco is the one that I would want personally, and I would use more fab to get Pacheco.
Right.
I would be shocked if Pacheco is available in the leagues that I'm in. If that names comes up, I would be shocked and I would jump on it every time.
Yeah, if anyone is, you know, if you're out there and you're looking on your rosters, and by the way, Dame, I think you have this exactly how a lot of people. I don't have a miserable experience because I use lists, right? I'm just looking at beat writers, and if they throw something in my face that I'm not like looking for, that's the price I pay for getting the valuable information I'm after. It's purely transactional.
Don't you feel though like? I mean, so yes, if you can follow lists, I suppose, but I feel like everything is so specific, like the algorithm just messes stuff up. I feel very strongly that I'm not seeing some of the stuff that I want to see, and that I have to constantly change it
I know I'm not being seen.
Go in chronological order, and I feel like I'm not being seen, and yeah. It's like I feel the same way about Instagram. Like the algorithm is taken over. Stop telling me what you think I want to see. Just show me what I've literally told you by checking the box that I want to see. Just show me that. Stop overthinking it.
Please. So Trey Benson's another one I wanted to hit on here before we move on to the other positions and get some more questions in. I see your questions. We'll get to them. The whole notion of Trey Benson, like I think there's guys that are contingent upside guys. Is Trey Benson in that regard? Like, because he's not going to have full value unless something happens to James Conner. If you were you've been holding on to Blake Corum all this time as a contingent upside guy, right? And you see Trey Benson out there doing the things he's done the last couple of weeks. Are you thinking, damn, I wish I had Trey Benson, or no, they're the same guy?
Excuse me. The thing about Trey Benson that confuses things for me is the Amari DeMarcado role in the backfield too. I don't know that anybody is a 1-for-1 for James Conner. And I have been holding on to him in the leagues where I have James Conner. I am not on the For You page, Mr. Scampers. Come on. I'm not 100% new here. Oh my God. I value my mental health way too much to ever end up there in that cesspool. But the Blake Corum thing, I just dropped him in a couple of leagues. Oh, you know, when I did it, when Nico Collins was ruled out, and I had to because he hadn't already played. And so that there was a droppable asset. And anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'm not as excited about Trey Benson for some reason. And maybe it's just the stage of the season that I'm in, but James Conner's been incredible.
Conner is incredible, and I tend to agree with you. These are, to me, all those guys are, you know, the whole list there. There are guys that I think are gonna be playable. There, I mean, like Gus Edwards might be playable now that he's back and he's going to have a role, or he's certainly going to be a limiting factor for J.K. Dobbins that we didn't need at this point, because J.K. had kind of been limiting himself a little bit in terms of yards per carry. He hadn't had the same explosive runs. Maybe a little less work will do him well.
Let me ask you about Jaylen Warren, though, because you said obviously about Jaylen Warren, but Jaylen Warren hasn't put up a double-digit outing all year. And, you know, he gets some work. But is it the type of work that we need for fantasy in order to get the production that we need? I mean, if you need a fill in on a bye week and you are okay with 9 points. But I kind of feel like that's what we're sort of looking at with Jaylen Warren. Do you have reason to believe that it's going in a different direction?
I think Bloom believes that the offense is improving, and I'll just go back to his piece, and so I'm not speaking for him. Could have the door open to value realization with Harris nursing an ankle injury. He could have scored late and posted a strong fantasy output, but he was held up at the one and fumbled. The Steelers are going to be in more high-scoring games. I think that's the aspect, and they'll have to be in pass mode more. That's the part that gets me. The schedule going forward, if they're playing in like more games where they're going to be passing more, that's the whole reason Jaylen Warren is supposedly there. So I'm buying into some of that, but like none of these guys are ideal except Isaiah Pacheco, and he won't be ideal until he's back on the field.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where we're at. Like they're like the savior is not coming at running back position unless it's Audric Estime, and Sean Payton was not okie doking us.
No, well, I mean, he already wasn't okie doking us because he had 14 carries and Jaleel had like 2, didn't he? And Javonte had 1. So you're already looking at a guy who got the volume in an important game. So it couldn't have been like, we're just going to try him out. Like they have to believe in Audric Estime if in a game against the Chiefs that they actually had a chance to win, they gave him the ball instead of the other guys. So I think we can believe him this time. I'm just saying why I didn't believe him last week and I didn't make that move. And it might have been too late for me.
Yeah, I think it's happening. I think it's definitely happening. And Estime is like every year we're looking for that guy who's going to emerge as the league winner at a position. And to me right now, of the guys you didn't draft, Estime is that guy. The guy that has that league winning upside if everything goes your way. Some of these wide receivers, I don't know about it. So I want to hit, there's been a question asked like repeated times by somebody who's very desperate to get it answered. I'm quite sure. Drop Dell for that. Bateman. So like, what are you doing? Like, I think so the Houston pass offense has not been great, right? It's been, part of it has been the pressure, Caleb hasn't been, or Caleb. CJ Stroud has not been playing extremely well. I wonder if it's like a deficit of weapons. And so if Collins comes back, would that cure everything, including Dell?
Well, it certainly helps. But CJ Stroud, even weapons earlier in the season, was looking a little bit sophomore slumpy. I respect the way that he's handling it. All of the answers to all of the questions about this, I think he's handled it in a really, the leadership has been strong. I have faith that he's going to work his way through it, but it hasn't been a great year for him. Certainly the line and the pressure is part of that problem. I don't know what I think about Dell. But honestly kind of feel the same way about Bateman. And I just went to look up do you have his fantasy numbers in front of you? Because I feel like that offense is also one that while they're throwing the ball a ton, kind of feels like it's like different people that take turns and it feels very spiking, Zay was a perfect example of that. Like, how did Zay come out of that specific Thursday night game where everyone ate and Zay didn't?
Yeah, I think the problem for me with this is you've got Zay getting the reasonable target share and you're getting nobody else. I think Bateman going into last week, I want to say, had been getting the like a 4% target share, right? And that's one of my problems with, Deontay Johnson. If you've got your second receiver getting a 4% target share, so looking at his targets, he did get 8 against Cincinnati, which was nice. Caught 6 of them, had the touchdown. So I think that's the thing. He does tend to make some big plays. He had the 4-for-4 game for 121 yards and a touchdown. He had a 4 of 8 game targets wise, 58 yards with a touchdown. Caught 3 of 4 with a touchdown. And so like every other week, he's scoring a touchdown, essentially. He's got 4 on the year. So like, I'm not enthusiastic about this because I think it's like Zay Flowers and now Mark Andrews has come on enough that, by the way, sell people. I'm telling you, because Zay Flowers is
Mark,
where, Zay Flowers is where this passing attack is running through to me.
Yeah, except not last week. But I do think it's interesting. I was looking at the Lamar numbers today because we talk about this offense as an offense that is not like there isn't a lot of volume to the passing game. That's always been the line about the Baltimore offense for like the last handful of years. He has the second most passing yards. this year. His EPA, his passing EPA is number 1. His passer rating, I mean, like he's dominating this year, and he's dominating in terms of the passing game specifically. And then I thought that this was funny. I tweeted it earlier. He has a negative 3.1 rush EPA this year, which amongst quarterbacks ranks 51st. Like what? I mean, obviously that's largely because of it's wrapped up in some volume also, because he's running the ball a lot more than a lot of those other people who might have like one positive scramble. And so their EPA is positive. But I guess the overarching point is that the way we've talked about Lamar since he's been in the league is 100% not who he is anymore. Like this is a guy who has proven every way you can possibly prove it that he is a great quarterback, period.
That is 100% true.
And so in that sense, I guess this was about wide receivers, reframing the way that we look at the wide receivers there also. Like there is volume in the passing game, and you have a quarterback much like Patrick Mahomes. We talk about DeAndre Hopkins going to Patrick Mahomes and how he's just going to get fed darts all the time now, and the catchable balls are going to be great. Well, Lamar is that guy also. Lamar is the quarterback that we can trust to get the ball to our assets. It's just that I think they're an interesting wide receiver room because I think they're full of a bunch of 2s and 3s for the most part.
Including Flowers. I mean, like once Flowers lit up the Denver Broncos and Pat Surtain, I looked at him differently, but I think I looked at him not because he burned Pat Surtain, because they moved him around, and I don't think Surtain was traveling with him, but the rushing attack makes it harder to do some of the things defenses like to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Derrick Henry has been a huge addition to all of it in terms of opening up the pass, right? So they definitely work in concert there. Yeah,
right.
I don't know. I don't know about the passing assets.
Looking at this whole group, like Ricky Pearsall is Bloom's favorite from 15 to 30%.
That makes sense.
Would you rather have Ricky Pearsall or Juwan Jennings?
Jennings.
Me too.
Jennings still.
Yeah, and probably he's been rostered or people held on to him. But if people drop Jennings, go out and grab him, people as well. Zari Kansabedian, calm down. I know you see the AD Mitchell on here, and you're very excited. It was interesting how the usage went without Michael Pittman. They moved Alec Pierce to the Z spot that Pittman held, and Mitchell moved into the X where Pierce played, and downstayed in the slot, and the results were pretty good.
Yeah, I still think that he'd be the third guy that I'd want in that offense.
For sure.
I still think so. And so in that sense, I mean, if you need somebody, maybe. But in terms of start-sit questions, we still see a lot of Downs or this guy. And if Downs is in a start-sit question, then AD Mitchell's probably just languishing on your bench and only being played in a desperation situation.
What if it's Richardson at quarterback? All bets are off.
Well, I mean, in that case, is anybody playable other than maybe, I don't know. Who would you play in that situation? Whoever's the field stretcher that can catch 3 balls for 100 yards.
I think that's it, but you're probably going to dial back on all of them until you see and that's going to be the problem with Richardson. We're not going to have the ramp up time. I need to be confident in him or the pieces around him. And that's the painful part. We'll get to the tight ends here. We had a couple tight ends questions. I know Royal Slave was asking about Sam Laporta. I've heard week to week. I don't know that he's going to be available this week. Royal. So, and also Kincaid. I don't think Kincaid will be ready to go this week either. Hurt his knee. So that'll be something to watch on both those accounts. Brock Wright against the Jaguars is a DFS play you all need to make, though. Jaguars can't stop a damn thing. Right? Like if there is no Sam Laporta, I'm just saying. All right. Are you ready to
Unless it's Justin Jefferson, Sam Darnold. Yeah. But other than that, no, Jags can't stop anybody.
And so Dawson Knox, obviously, we've seen him be a factor in this offense, especially if Amari Cooper's back on the practice field. He may come back, but there'll be no Keon Coleman. Dawson Knox, probably a tail end streaming option. Are you ready to fire the dismissal with me, Lindsay?
Yeah,
are you ready?
100%. Did you know that Will Dissly had a 41.7% first read rate this past weekend? He had the third highest first read rate in the entire NFL.
Look, you're just trying to get me going now.
What? How is he? Like, it's one thing to have a target share that is high, which, by the way, he had the 4th highest target share of the week at 33.3%. And this is something that happened a couple of weeks ago, too.
It did.
This isn't like, I mean, it's not 100%
not an isolated incident.
But it's not an isolated incident. Will Dissly is a major guy that they are using in the passing game in an offense that is, well, I mean, they only threw the ball 18 times this past week. So it's not exactly like, the pass rate over expectation is through the roof or anything like that. But in terms of over expected situations, it's actually more than you would think. Like, that's going up as the season has gone on. Justin Herbert's in his bag. He's playing so well. He's not hurt anymore. I'm kind of excited about this. I mean, I'm not excited about the fact that an offense is targeting Will Dissly at the highest rate on their team. That's never a good sign, I don't think. But the fact that it's a first read rate, like, he's like, where's Will? Okie doke. What? How is that where you're starting? So you have to be excited about that from fantasy. You have to.
I'm telling you. All right, we're going to get the questions here for a second. I have a few other outliers, maybe Lindsay, if you had any as well. Drake May, I know Royal Slade would agree with this. The rushing equity has been nice. Yeah. And we had mentioned Keisha Mbute and the wide receivers. There seems to be a little bit of a connection there. But how do you feel about Drake May?
Drake May love. I don't know from a fantasy standpoint. Like, again, these are
quarterback 2 and a super flex.
100%. Yeah. And so in that case, you're kind of going with whoever you can get. Like, what's your either or if you have Drake May, right?
Derek
like
Carr.
Who are you like? What would you do? What would that? What would you?
I don't expect Marquez Valdez-Scantling to catch every pass. History suggests MVS will miss some.
Well, 100%. MVS is like, yes. MVS is like Alec Pierce, like that performance you have to put into the Xavier Woods, who's that? Xavier Worthy,
right?
Alec Pierce, the 3 targets for 102 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Like, that is not duplicatable on a week-to-week basis. But I don't know, man. Derek Carr hasn't been terrible this year.
I feel like David's going to come yell at me in a second.
Well, I do like Drake. I'm not sure if I like him enough to actually start any of his wide receivers, though.
Let's say Daniel Jones comes back.
Daniel
Jones comes back, or Daniel Jones, depending on how you like to call him. I like to go with the Malik Neighbors version.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, he can't come back.
No, he's not coming back.
He's not welcome here anymore.
So Marshawn Lloyd is what I wanted to hit on. Is a speculative play. Do you see any value there at all, assuming he's going to come back? Or is he just buried now? I mean, Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks coming on. Somewhere Matt Waldman heard me say Chris Brooks and his ears perked up, got all excited.
I mean, if you have Josh Jacobs, I think that's the only way that this hits, right? Is if you get into this mix from a volume standpoint and step into a role that opens up for you. I don't necessarily see any other Audric Estimes out there that are like going to overtake a starter. I don't know. I don't know if you feel differently. If
Not
there's
really.
a team that is I can't even think of a bad team that at some point will pivot to the younger guy just to see what they have. I don't even know if there's a situation like that I foresee.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the point for me where I'm focused on strengthening my starters and I'm less worried about my depth. I mean, I want some depth, but I'm not looking to grab guys coming off IR that are rando players. So I think the bid percentage is correct. I mean, he's a first come, first serve guy, as is Curtis Samuel, as is MVS, not chasing those points. I've chased those points before, people. No. It's not fun. You scrape your knees up. Your team doesn't do well. I think we're getting also to the point of the season where Zari had a great comment. I'm overthinking my lineups and becoming the architect of my own demise. How do you avoid this, Lindsay?
By having too many teams, as I know you do too, there's very little overthinking that happens. To be honest with you, like the most I overthink is when I'm doing start sit live streams and people go this guy or that guy. And then I'm like, am I thinking about everything that I need to think about there? But when it's me and I'm just like, nope, that's a better player. I feel like I don't overthink those lineups. And I do that less because I have so many lineups and I just don't have time to do it. Whereas if I had like 1 or 2 rosters, I think you'd kind of debate back and forth. My husband debates a lot. I have more thought that goes into his rosters in terms of start sit questions that we talk about in our house than any of my teams. And that might not be good for my teams. Maybe I should be thinking about it more, but I'm like, who do I need filled? Who's on a bye? Who's not good anymore? Does this look right? Yes. Boom. Like there's not a whole lot of overthinking that happens.
Yeah, I don't have the bandwidth to overthink. I set and forget, and like I'm lucky if I can get back on Sunday while I'm doing the pregame show when somebody gets a last minute scratch that I didn't expect. Looking at you, Brian Robinson Jr. 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I think that's the thing is like, you know, like I set and forget, but everyone else I know is a tinker. Dempsey tinkers. I know Jeff Mance while we're doing the pregame shows, working his lineups. Howard Bender, all those people are. Howard's very smart. Howard has a massive spreadsheet, which he knows where everybody is and what's going on. I need to do that. Howard, I'm hiring you. And what will Juju's role be going forward? I don't think he has one. Do you?
I don't know. Probably not. I mean, he's in a different. What would that look like?
I think it looks like he got obsoleted by DeAndre Hopkins to me. I mean, they have that one role, it seems like. They have the Rashee Rice role, or the Rashee Rice role, if you want to say it correctly. I will say it both ways. And whoever's filling that void seems to have a certain amount of production and nobody else does. And so it seems like Hopkins has come in and done well enough. Juju was great for the game. He was healthy there. But I don't know that Juju was a sustainable thing based on what I saw of him in New England. It just seems like, you know, his last season in Kansas City was his last season of being a viable prospect for me.
I think whoever finds their way on the field is probably, and you're probably right, but I don't know. I feel like D-Hop has the ability to play on the outside and Juju could be in the slot. And I think D-Hop kind of opens up things, you know, for Kelsey. I think we've seen that. The fact that he is a guy that pulls a defender in a different direction and doesn't clog up the middle of the field. I think that that's somewhat beneficial.
I think he just makes the offense better to me, better than the other people have, except for Rashee Rice, who is not doing that right now. John Mechie III, a legit play, or is this just circumstances because there was not all the available pieces?
Yeah, I think that. But
in Dynasty, you're holding the hell out of that guy, right? Like I've been holding him and he hasn't done anything yet. I hold Dynasty receivers my entire life.
I was just going to say, me too, because the reason that you pick him up in the first place, you're like, well, but if, and then you but if for like 2 years. Yeah. So I saw that there was an Eric All Dynasty question in the comments.
There was.
Also. I would not do anything with Eric All in Dynasty. I would hold on to him. I think he looks good. And so that's a situation where I very much want to see what that looks like in year 2. And remember Trey McBride in year 1?
Yep.
Was a guy that when they drafted him, I think he was a first round real draft pick, right? Like they took him so early. And I remember thinking at the time that it didn't make any sense that they had used their draft pick on him. And so I took him in Dynasty thinking this has to be a priority. Like there has to be a thought process attached to this. And then the fact that they didn't even try to get him on anyway, this is a long-winded way of saying that at tight end, sometimes it's year 2 or year 3. And I think Eric All is a special guy. I think Ben Sennett is another guy in Washington that I think I have in Dynasty. If I didn't have in Dynasty, if you have him in Dynasty, I would hold on to that and or try to get him because once Zach Ertz is gone, I think that's another guy. Jatavian Sanders, right?
There you go.
In a Carolina Panthers offense that is devoid of pass catchers for the rest of the season.
Right now.
100%. I went and picked him up in a Dynasty league this past week, prior to last week, thinking I need him for the future just in case.
How much will Edwards back hurt Dobbins in either standard? I think it's going to be a limiting factor to a degree. There was enough work there yesterday to worry me in his first game back.
But early in the season when they were both there, it was Dobbins was going crazy.
Right. I just don't want a limiting factor. I mean, I want Dobbins going crazy because that's where my investment is now. I want Dobbins being unfettered, free to roam, with only Kamani Vidal nibbling at his heels, not Gus Edwards ready to steal goal line work.
Yeah, I would still be happy to be a manager that had Dobbins And I don't have interest in Edwards from a fantasy standpoint.
I don't have interest in him, but he did look good, and it worries me because I like to worry. Yes, Malik Neighbors is still a top 10 wide receiver. He is not necessarily a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, but he's still going to be damn good. I mean, don't panic, kids.
Once they get him a quarterback.
Even with, he's been fantastic without a quarterback. I mean,
Giants have the 5th pick in the draft if it were to happen right now. And I have a feeling that they're going to lose some more games.
Xavier was WWE
I'm just saying
superstar.
They did. What if they did pivot to Drew Lock and lose a bunch of games down the stretch and end up? No, I'm sorry. They don't have the 5th overall pick. What an idiot. I'm looking at power rankings. They have the 5th most. From a power ranking standpoint, they have the 2nd overall pick. So they are at the moment very nicely positioned to draft that battery mate for Malik Neighbors.
This is a legitimate fear. Right? I mean, this is all of our fears that our stud running back is going to turn into a timeshare creature, and so we're all worried about that. I think Kareem Hunt has a shelf life. I don't know if I'm worried about Pollard. Tyjae Spears, I mean, he'll again, I don't want any limiting factor, but Pollard is still the primary guy.
Yeah. As somebody who has Tyjae Spears on a bunch of benches and hasn't even been able to look in his direction as a possible person to put in my lineups, I feel like that's a situation of overthinking it. What is the real problem there is that the offense is crap. I mean,
yes.
You have a running back in a bad offense that's going to trail more often than not down the stretch. I think that's your biggest problem there.
By the way, Mark, yes, you can still start him, and I would still start him. I'll start the heck out of him. I just I have concerns. I want the whole deal, man. Are you? We get very.
What are we talking about here, though? Really, what was the split? Let's break it. Let's get into your fears here. Let's discuss
it was enough to bother me. Let's discuss it. I'm on board for it.
Okay. So he had 10 rush attempts for 55 yards. Gus Edwards. J.K. Dobbins had 15 for 50. I rest
my case. That's not the split I'm after, Lindsay.
No.
That's all I'm saying.
No, that's not ideal.
I want perfection, but we're never going to get perfection, right? So interesting. Lamar is a pathological ball spreader arounder. I think he's been focused way more on Zay Flowers this year than I ever would have expected. I mean, seeing a guy get the target share he's getting that isn't a tight end has surprised me, and it's been a revelation. And yes, hold Malik Neighbors. I mean, if you're trading him right now, you're trading for all the baggage that comes with him, right? And you're not going to get what you want.
Yep.
We got a couple more questions here before we call it night. Thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate your time and sticking around. Again, I'm here every Tuesday on the hot seat. Today, Lindsay Rose. Follow her on the X at Lindsay_Rose or Blue Sky or wherever. Catch her every darn day on the Fantasy Dirt podcast with Michael Fabiano over at SI.com. Tuesdays on the Sumer Sports show with Thomas Dimitrov. Super interesting show, by the way. Very well done stuff. Let's see what else we got here. Was there any? There was something caught my eye. No, we're not going to get to any question. Everybody, sorry about that.
Dismissal. I like all the dismissal.
Fire the dismissal. That's a drop on the show, on the Die Hard show. That will play indiscriminately throughout the season. Jamal Agnew's gotten a lot of chatter into the chat, which is great. He's also a fantastically big fan. He is a fantastic. He will steal touchdowns from somebody.
Jamal Agnew.
Swagnew to you.
Jamal Agnew's like a DFS guy, right? Every once in a while, if the matchup is right, you're I need somebody who's really inexpensive, who might touch the ball, who's free. That's Jamal Agnew. I don't know. I'm not going to.
Rest of season, Kraft or Jonnu? And why is it Kraft and not Jonnu?
Well, but the problem there, I mean, I guess the problem in both cases is that they are both in offenses where the ball's going to get spread around, right? The thing with Kraft, and I have him in a handful of leagues, but he feels like he's the easiest one to kind of move on from. Although honestly, you're talking about go ahead and drop Mark Andrews. I mean, the position is weird,
It
right?
is.
Like there's a lot of people who fall into that category.
Stream, baby, stream.
Jonnu Smith, by the way, is coming off a game in which he had the exact same first read rate as Tyreek Hill.
What are you doing with Tyreek Hill? Two players. What are you doing with Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb? I mean, like a lot of times I would say you're playing them like you drafted them.
I know.
Well, you can keep doing that, but it's time to divorce the name from the numbers, right?
Yes. It's just so hard to put them on your bench. So it's like, it's one of those things where in your brain, whether you think of him as your wide receiver 1, 2, 3, how many flex spots you have, I just have a hard time believing that he doesn't take up a spot in your lineup. Now, if you have a short, you're not playing in a league that has like 4 flex spots or something like that. If it's like wide receiver, flex, then 100%. I have leagues where I have 3 wide receivers specifically that I would play over Tyreek Hill at this point. If you're in a league that's that consolidated.
Cedric Tillman, you're playing over Tyreek Hill. Are you?
That's a tough one.
That's like he's putting up Tyreek Hill numbers. His first 2 games, he had combined 40 plus fantasy points, 45 fantasy points. That was as many as Amari Cooper had in his first 5 games.
I just don't understand. I don't understand it with Tyreek. Like I feel like I just want to. I mean, we're not going to get these answers, right? But like, why would Tyreek have a low first read rate? Why? That makes no sense. The speed is still there. Is he hurt? Did they game plan that? Were they like, oh, the Rams are going to take him away, so he's just going to we're going to let him run around and just drop some defensive attention, but I'm always going to be thinking about somewhere else. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. Yeah, I'm really confused with a lot of Miami Dolphins things.
We're not going to do sit-start questions here, everybody. I do those on Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, live stream all the questions we can do. Tyreek Cup or McLaurin pick 2. I'm going to have a lot of those questions, and probably the answer is going to be Cup and McLaurin.
Yes.
A lot of times. Yeah. I mean, we'll figure it out as we get closer to the weekend and sort through some of these things. Zari had a good point too. I mean, I think this backfield is going to be a mess going forward in Miami. I think the Dolphins are a mess going forward. Is Mike McDaniel on the hot seat?
I mean, it depends on how they close things out. I think he's going to probably get saved by Tua unless things fall apart down the stretch, because I did not expect them to win that game last night against the Rams. The Rams looked terrible, but how much did the Dolphins help the Rams look terrible? Like I bet the Rams yards after the catch, and I haven't looked up their yards after the catch numbers, but the yards after the catch numbers have to have been really, really, really low, because the Dolphins just had like defenders on them the entire time. And maybe that was to a degree the familiarity with each other. I don't know. But I mean, I think that he was definitely on the hot seat when Tua was not starting for them, because it was inexplicable that they fell apart without Tua. Like Tua of all people. Like, I mean, and we could talk up Tua's strengths as much as you want, but like the ADOT is like 5, right? So you can't get a quarterback who complete 5-yard passes at the rate that he does. Like, it's inexplicable to me that it's not clicking more for them this year.
Drop Brian Thomas Jr. for Quentin Johnson or Waddle in a standard non-PPR. Boy. I think rearranging the deck furniture is do we sometimes just do moves because we get bored?
Yes, 100%. And Waddle, I don't think Waddle's had a double-digit game all year.
Right.
Like, you're looking at Waddle, and by the way, if you're thinking of moving to Waddle, you're looking at Waddle for his name. Because I bet you whoever has Waddle is hoping that you are thinking of Jalen Waddle as being the name, because he's not getting it done this year at all.
Who wins the trade? Higgins for Mooney. This is an interesting one, because I think Higgins is a great trade target right now, because he's been out of sight, out of mind, and hurt. And if you're taking a chance and you want to make a move on him, I don't know if Mooney's maybe too much to give up for him right now, but I think Higgins is a great trade target.
Yeah, Higgins is great. The Bengals passing game. I would want access to anybody who's catching balls from Joe Burrow right now. But Mooney's first read rate led the NFL in weeks 9 and 8.
There you have it.
Darnell Mooney.
All right, everybody. Our time is up here. It's been fantastic. It went extremely fast. Hope we got some of your questions. If not, catch me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, 10 to midnight, Saturday night, 8 to 11 on Fantasy and NFL channel, Sunday on the pregame show with Jeff Manns. You'll hear me every morning on the Daily Update podcast with 10 minutes of fantasy news and analysis just for you. My notebook on Thursday, Polarizing Players Friday, In and Out. It was a big week for In and Out this week. One of my better weeks. So check that out on Saturday. Lindsay, you can hear her every day with Fabian. What time do you guys do that every day?
Well, it's not live, so we tape in the morning my time, but I'm on the West Coast, so it's later.
Yeah, I catch it later in the day, so I don't know when you do it. So, and
also they usually come out around probably 4 Eastern is my guess.
And that's every single day at SI.com. Also, catch her on Sumer Sports Tuesdays with Thomas Dimitroff. Great show and great stuff. And Lindsay, thanks so much for coming on and doing the Football Guys thing with me. You were fantastic. And the swearing was right on point. Like everybody, I'm super proud of my ability to swear. Like I can use words as hyphens that aren't meant to be hyphens. I take second place to Lindsay Rhodes.
Oh, dude. I'm so flattered. Yeah. But Joe, I didn't just for you.
There were no apologies necessary. All right, Lindsay, thanks so much. Everyone follow her on the X Machine at Lindsay_Rhodes. Look for her in Blue Sky too. And I'll be there as well. We'll see you all here on Saturday, 11 a.m. Bye now.
Bye, guys.